This was a pretty consequential debate. I read that a lot of people are going to be basing their vote on the performance we saw. Some people are saying ABC is biased. That's interesting. Other people are saying she slayed. You guys turn your sound up because some are saying really bad moderators. Okay, I love you all, but I'm going to mute, turn off commenting. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. Okay, let's get right to it because I have to do something for NPR in about 10 minutes. So, Brian, what did you think?
From my perspective, it was better for Kamala Harris than I expected. I think you know that because the Trump defenders aren't actually defending Trump. They're attacking the moderators. No one's actually saying he won the debate. She went in with a plan, which was to bait and rattle him, and it worked. I kept thinking back to Hillary's comment 8 years ago that a man you can bait with a tweet is not somebody you want to trust with nuclear weapons. And, every time she threw out a little bit of bait, he just swallowed it whole and got distracted. The immigration section, which should have been his strength, became this kind of rambling, incoherent answer about people eating dogs.
Well, that's a
I thought it was the best of
that's been
her.
making its way on social media that JD Vance retweeted that is not correct. And I was grateful that David Muir actually called a city official and refuted that because that has been making the rounds and some people keep insisting it's true. So I wasn't surprised he said that. And it was interesting to me. Normally, Kamala Harris is criticized for word salad, but I thought Donald Trump's answers were very kind of word salady themselves and kind of discombobulated.
Well, this is why it's important to prepare because, candidates don't typically say new stuff in these moments. It's very high stakes. It's very high stress. So they revert to what they've been saying dozens and dozens of times. So you know how your opponent's going to answer the question on the economy and trade and national security. And so you have a plan. You know what you want to get across. You know how you want to define your opponent, define yourself, and execute your answer. She did that. He was defensive, reactive, and hot and bothered most of the time. He was schwitzy, he was rambling, he seemed old, he seemed like he'd had, a couple too many Diet Cokes or something else in advance. So it was like over-caffeinated, overreacting is how I thought about it.
I think a lot of Americans still, prior to this debate, said, according to polls, they didn't have a good sense of who Kamala Harris was. She had yet to truly define herself and define her policy positions. How did she do on those fronts, Brian? Do you think she was specific enough about policy so people had something to hold on to? And did she do a good enough job defining who she was as a person?
I think she did a good job. I would have liked a little bit more middle class economics. I would have liked a little bit more sort of specific plans, pivoting off the back and forth Trump attacks to you, the voter. But that's kind of a quibble. She did that. This debate was really supposed to be all about her, but it kind of became all about Trump and the way he was reacting and responding. Because, he's pretty well defined. She still has about a quarter of the voters who would like to learn more about her, who don't know enough. And so she had to kind of come into this with a plan to describe that she's mainstream, that she's a strong leader, that she's not Biden, that she's a new generation of leadership. And I thought by the end, she had gotten through all of that. The beginning was a little more tentative, but sort of understandably so. I mean, I can't imagine the nerves at that moment. But, I was looking, by the way, right before we went on, Katie, at the most recent New York Times poll, and I just wrote down a couple of things. The challenge that she had, as I said, was the sort of lack of definition around who she is as a leader, but also 60% of the country thinks we're on the wrong track. 3-1, people think the economy is fair or poor versus good or excellent. So she has to be a change candidate because the voters want change. And that's a tricky thing to do when you're the incumbent vice president.
And do you think she did a good job at sort of positioning herself as the change candidate?
I think she did a pretty good job. And I think her opponent had a historic implosion right next to her. And I think that's what's going to matter. What I'm hearing from, other operatives in politics is that the dials, that is the focus groups that, that sit with a little dial in front of them and they turn to the left if they don't like what they're seeing and to the right if they do like what they're seeing, were really bad for Trump. They were predictably really bad in the abortion section, but he didn't get a big win in the economy section, and he lost the immigration section, which should have been his strength. So, and as the debate went on, I mean, typically the first 15 or 20 minutes is the most important chunk of a debate. I would say she won that early chunk, but he didn't, not going away. But then once we got into 30 minutes and 45 minutes and an hour, he just got angrier and angrier, hotter and hotter, and was doing almost a version of like Fox News Mad Libs with illegal aliens giving transgender people abortions in prisons. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but only very slightly.
Yeah, I thought there were a few moments that stood out that surprised me. And one was the whole conversation about Vladimir Putin. I thought she was very effective in saying, he would eat him for lunch, and world leaders basically ridicule him. But I was surprised that Donald Trump couldn't say that he wanted Ukraine to win the war.
I wasn't. He has never said a negative word about Vladimir Putin in 9 years. Not once. That's one constant through his life. I can't explain it. I don't understand it. But, typically a Republican wins on national security. They're better at describing American exceptionalism and American strength. And she embraced John McCain. She embraced NATO.
Why he used Viktor Orban as a character reference seemed really bizarre. Can you explain why that seems so strange to foreign policy experts?
Because he didn't pick a little d Democrat around the world. He picked an aspiring autocrat, a strongman. As he said himself, he admires dictators and strongmen in a way that, previous presidents haven't, and sort of doesn't acknowledge or understand America's unique role in the world, promoting democracy and freedom. And I think it was, this is a dead even race. And to the extent that she can peel off a few, Bush, McCain, Romney voters in the suburbs who still love to hear that old song about, promoting democracy and standing up for America around the world, the most lethal fighting force in the world. She played that music, as much as she could.
And in the spirit of fairness, were there any moments that you thought she could have hit a home run when she only hit a double?
Yeah, I thought a couple of times she was so focused on, baiting and tweaking Trump that she missed the opportunity to pivot to her weakness, his strength, which is, the guy's an asshole, but he runs the economy better, which you hear all the time in focus groups. And so she could have turned back more to her core message, which is, the emperor has no clothes. He left the economy in a shambles. And I actually have a plan to make your life better. He doesn't. Now, she did a version of that. And again, she got better at that as she went on. And she closed very strongly on that. But the closing statement is never as important as the opening statement.
Do you think they changed any minds tonight? Is it too early to tell? Or do you think, according to the focus groups, that you were, I guess,
I've gotten
touching base with?
Yeah, I've gotten little snippets from people. I wasn't watching any groups, but the laziest punditry in the world is to say, well, this probably won't change very much. And honestly, there were some people who even said that after the June 27th debate. I think this will change things. I think he had a really bad night. I think she had quite a good night. And so I do think you could see, even in this inelastic tribal electorate, her pulling ahead a little bit. Now, the question is, can she pull ahead by enough? I mean, remember, Hillary won by 2.5 nationally, Biden won by 4.5 nationally, and that was the difference between victory and defeat. She cannot win or get to 270 in all likelihood by tying the popular vote, which is probably where she is now. She needs to gain, he needs to lose. And this was a step in that direction, I think.
All right. Hey, Brian, thank you so much. It's always great to see you. Maybe I'll call you and we can discuss this some more. I think in terms of the performance, she definitely stayed cool, calm, and collected. Some people criticize her kind of bemused expressions in the split screen, but that, I don't know, maybe it didn't bother me that much. But some people said that she shouldn't have been mugging so much. What do you think of that? I'm curious.
I thought mostly it was effective. And an interesting stat that somebody tweeted, that Trump actually spoke like 25 or 30% more in this debate. So if the moderators were so biased against him, he was kind of hanging himself by his own words. Now they're going to point to, the choice of topics, et cetera. But I think it was good that they did some fact checking. I don't think that's biased journalism. I think if you're
No,
for
I
the
think it's
facts,
excellent. People were bitching on Twitter that, oh no, well, they're not fact checking her, but maybe she didn't need to be fact checked as much as he did.
she
Did you
wasn't.
hear anything that you thought needed to be fact checked when it came to Kamala Harris's comments?
I'm sure there were a couple of things. I really wasn't watching it like Daniel Dale and checking every little thing.
Yeah.
And he will do, I'm sure, an excellent report on CNN later tonight about who said what. But it's like it's like comparing a paper cut to cardiac arrest. It's sort of hard to look at yeah, the paper cut hurts a little bit. Maybe it shouldn't have been there, but there's no moral equivalence between her kind of stuff, which is within the bounds of normal political shading, exaggeration, and his just, endless lies.
All right. Brian, have a great night. Thanks
I'll
everyone
fix
for
my lighting
watching our quick
next time.
recap. I'll talk to you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.